broken, not with one leg, not with one toe, but back to your capacity. And there are many ways in, of course, that it's defined more theologically. It's basically the ability for people or individuals, communities to prevent, adapt to, and recover from shocks and stresses without compromising your future well-being. So the story of the rubber band is when you go this way, you come back together without having compromised your future, and you have recovered. USID is one of those entities that's very interested in resilience, and they look at it as the ability of people, households, communities, but they also add countries, systems. So they go beyond just us and the community and move towards systems. And then, of course, there are going to be very many ways in which you could measure if somebody is resilient or not. And it will depend a lot on different metrics. But the idea is that, are you able to come back from this stretch and back in a shape that is recognizable? Now, and just very quickly, moving away from resilience, we said inside resilience, it means you would have experienced a shock or a stress. Now, let's talk a bit about a shock and a stress. A shock or a stress is any external deviation from your long-term trend. So every day, let's say you have breakfast at 9. For some reason, something happens and you can no longer have breakfast at 9 and you start having it at midday. So once you start having those deviations from your routine, you are experiencing some kind of shock. Now that might be simplistic, but let's look at something more serious. If you used to take a car to school or you used to drive and all of a sudden you can no longer because something happened, you probably lost your resources, you can't afford the fuel, you can't take a taxi. And so all of a sudden, you have to all of a sudden start walking to work 6-7 kilometers. It means you're deviating from your usual trend. So your usual trend has been you take a car, you take a cab, you take a boda. But all of a sudden now you have to start walking because you experience a shock that has made you deviate. So shocks can vary in type and size, and they could be short-term deviations, they could become long-term deviations, and that's why it's underlined. And basically, shocks are not nice. Oftentimes, they come with a negative effect, and they will affect your state of well-being. They could affect your mood, they could affect your behavior, your patterns, your relationships. It could affect your assets. Certain shocks might be so major. I think one of the big ones that we remember altogether is COVID. COVID was a major shock that is global. Wasn't an individual shock, but of course, as it was global, it was something that arrived and affected our patterns of behavior. We couldn't connect. We had to do all this new language around distancing started coming up. So we could not hug. So there were deviations from our usual patterns. So you could have those kinds of global shocks that everybody worries about, but you could also have shocks that are related to only you as an individual. And they could be little from loss of income and different kinds of things. I'll check if you experience any shock shortly. But basically, it's going to be negative and it's going to affect your level of asset, your livelihood, your safety, your ability to continue in the future. Now, if you have internet on your device, there is this slide here that takes you to, you could take a photograph of this slide, and it's going to give us a chance to hear from you about what shocks you may have experienced. Remember, these are deviations from your long-term, from your usual long-term trends, and they affect the way you behave, work, and they affect your future. Let me take this slide off, take us to this. Joanne, you let me know if you can see my screen that has something else.
It's now not in slide view. It's off, okay. Actually. It's off.
So you're okay, fine. Let me show you this screen.
Okay.
Are you seeing this screen?
Yes, we are. In one word, share any shocks that you have experienced.
Yes. So for you to do this, you're going to either take a photograph, a Google picture of this, the QR code, or you could go up here on our slide. We have menti.com. You go to a website called menti.com, www.menti.com. And on the slide, you're seeing some numbers there. I'm hoping 4246603. Those numbers basically is the code you need to put in when you get to Menti. As soon as you put in that code, share with us any one word that any shock you've experienced, but summarized in one word. Now, one word is Rita. One word can be rain. It can be sunshine. It can't be I lost a relative. Those are 3 words.
Okay.
Okay, John, I'm looking forward to you trying this as well.
I'm hoping you can accept also some posting in the chat. just in case, we are not so much. Employment. One word.
Yes.
One word.
That's one word. So employment is one word. It's true. Girlfriend is one word. So the shock was a girlfriend. Whatever happened to the girlfriend, she probably left, or the employment ended, or it transitioned to something else. That's the beauty of the one word. It leaves us speculating. And yes, if you can't use the QR code or log on to menti.com, you could also go onto the chat and write something. But I can see that majority of us are very digitally connected, which is beautiful. So I can see things like relationships, death is major. So the more we see a word becoming stronger inside our narrative page here, it means it's a very common shock. Death is a big shock, and it can happen in various ways to a loved one, to a relative, to a friend, to a colleague at work. And death can have phenomenal effects on your well-being, on your current state, your future, depending on the kind of relationships you had. But I think, quite a bit coming in here. Let's see what's on the chat.
On the chat, we have boss, accident, negligence, employment, accidents, those are still coming through,
Okay, so when marriage becomes a shock, it's a problem. But maybe, Joanne, you want to talk about marriage in the next session?
That one can be another topic. Not for today.
Yes, but we can experience all kinds of losses. It can be a personal loss, a loss of property, a loss of a loss in terms of relationships. So usually these shocks are categorized in certain ways, and we'll see some examples of shocks. But I think the most common shocks that we're experiencing around relationships and death, plus all kinds of losses. But I see love, heartbreak, marriage, accidents, girlfriends. Let me stop sharing this and we'll get back to that, but you can continue sharing whatever shocks you might be experiencing. So Joanne, do you still see my screen on the PowerPoint?
Yes, we see. What shocks have you experienced? Maybe you want to go to the next.
Exactly. So when we experience those kinds of shocks,
you want to make it a slideshow?
Yeah, sure. Is it a slideshow now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I'll just tell you about a very quick shock that I experienced about 3 weeks ago. I woke up at around 2 a.m. and I was facing a guy who was standing by my bedside asking me to cover my head. And then I tried to cover my head a little bit, and then he said I wasn't covering well, so he got the part of the blanket and tried to cover my head forcefully. And I thought it was a bit outrageous. But in the process, I was scared, of course. And then he says I should give him some money. And immediately I tell him, well, I don't keep my money in the house. I don't even know where I got that courage. But then I think the fact of pushing my head down and asking me to cover myself a bit harder kind of clicked wrongly, because I imagined this guy, he had no shirt, he's standing at my bedside. I have an 11-year-old daughter in the next room. Where has he been? He was wearing a mask. I couldn't tell who he was. And so I decided to get up at once and threaten shooting. So I told him I was going to shoot you. And I tried to reach out. Fortunately, my husband is kind enough to keep some equipment under the bed. So I was able to get a hoe, an axe kind of hoe thing. And then I said, that became my gun. Of course, by the time I pulled out the hoe, the guy was taking off. Eventually, he takes off, and then I go shouting and in panic. And I happened to have my brother-in-law in the house who was able to help me look for him, but we couldn't find him. In the process, I lost my mobile phone. So during this shock of theft, let's say, it's one of the shocks you could experience. Many things happened to me. I got scared. Usually, and that brings us to this slide about coping. When a shock is experienced, the first thing that happens is you get like, you have certain reactions, and they could be, like in my case, a reaction of fear, a reaction of desperation. I could have even gone mute. There are immediate reactions that you could have. But when that wears off, you start having a bit of an adapted reaction, which is now what we call coping. And you can cope positively or negatively, especially after a shock. Fortunately, I was able to react quite quickly, get up, scare the guy, and he took off. Now, my phone, if some of you might know me, my phone is very important for me, not because I use it for communication. It's where I write. As a person, I write everything on the phone. I go for a meeting and I'm writing. I was so special because I had all my notes in there, and then, so I had to start coping with lots of phone contacts, with lots of appointments, with my calendar. I started struggling with the coping thing. But the worst part was coping with the police. The reporting mechanism, they made me tired. And then I was out of contact. I lost some money in the process, but it wasn't so severe as much as the struggle after. Now, 2-3 weeks later, I could decide to be crying over the phone and never move on, or I can decide to take a positive way of responding to the issue, which is one, borrow my children's phone and start using it. That could be a positive way of responding to the issue. Find another way of writing my notes, figure out ways of dealing with the issue. I was being told by different people to talk to a professional because they thought the thing is going to be very traumatic. Yes, for a few nights I still don't find it easy to sleep in my room. I keep on doing nomadic behavior, moving from one room to another because I suspect the guy will show up. I have more than one axe under the bed now, just in case he shows up. I have almost considering putting a knife also under the pillow. But I think in a few months, I will have the capacity to respond much, much differently. So coping is when we respond to a shock. It's our immediate step when a shock has happened. And in different circumstances, we will cope by crying, by shouting, by laughing. But some people actually take the coping to a different level. They will take coping in a negative way. They will start drinking alcohol, start drugs because they help you to forget preliminarily for a short time, temporarily. They might start hiding away. They might start taking on behavior that actually worsens your state than before you had the shock. Now, if you want to move to the step towards resilience, you have to take your coping in a positive way. You can't have coping that is negative. So when I think about the relationships that you presented there as shocks you've experienced, I think about theft, accidents. Then I start thinking, what could be the possible reaction? The immediate reaction can be anything because adrenaline is up. But over time, you need to start figuring out ways you're going to deal with this situation that will help you move on. Now, shocks. If you look at this trampoline, the expectation is that if you have a trampoline that works, a support system that works, when you bounce on it, when you fall onto this trampoline, when you come back up, it means you're starting to cope. When you remain down, you crash and go downwards, it means you're actually not going to go towards resilience. You're going to take on the negative coping and go downwards. And the shocks usually sit on the trampoline as we see. Now, I would like you to take a moment and think a bit of all the shocks that you wrote on the chart, or the ones that you've experienced that you're thinking about. How did you exactly cope with them? Did you have both mixed positive and negative coping? How long was it? The detriment of having very long-term negative coping mechanisms is that you just might not get to the resilience mode. Now, these are types of shocks that are taken from a project that I manage that has at least 13,000 individuals. The most common shocks that are reported are illness or injury, death, livestock death, because for them, really, livestock is very important. Drought, theft, market shocks. But you can see what's really personal is illnesses and injury. If you lose a household head, you lose a relative, it can be detrimental. The most three that are most common are illness, injury, and death. And 66% of the population we're working with experience some kind of shock. When we ask them, what did you do to cope? Majority of them, because of a period of coaching, actually had very positive ways in which they were coping, which means majority of them could potentially move to resilience. This is a short story of Richard, who is bitten by a dog on his way to school. As he's bitten by a dog, on the next picture, he starts to cry. Crying is your immediate reaction to the shock of a dog bite. What does he do next? He doesn't remain there. Fortunately, he has some relationships. So his friends, his peers from school on his way help him and lift him up and take him to a place where he can actually get a bandage and some first aid. And what happens after? He's looking forward to a future. Yes, he has a clutch. He seems to have a little bit of a limp, but it doesn't mean his future is completely destroyed. What we see here is that for Richard to truly cope, he needs to take care. He has certain things that help him. And those now are the elements of resilience that I would like to shift you to as we conclude this conversation. What is your shield? What helps you to move from coping to resilience? There are really three main critical ingredients. And whatever you do, wherever you go, these are the three ingredients that will ultimately, in different studies, have found to be the ones responsible for helping people to move towards resilience. One of them, and it's basically in this quadrant that you see, I can, I have, and I am. And let me start by explaining I can. I can really is, as a person, what can you do? What kind of skills do you have? What kind of capacities do you have? What kind of ways in which, what materials can you use? What can you do in a situation of a shock? I have is your relationships. What relationships do you have? Are they peers? Are they strong? Are they broken? Is it family? Is it a workplace and employment relationship? Is it a business relationship? What relationships can you harness with the church, with a provider, with a colleague that are helpful for you when you experience a shock? What about I am? I am is really the internal faith, belief, hope. Sometimes you have all these relationships, but you don't really feel very strongly about things. You're not sure about the future. You're extremely scared. If I am is affecting you, it's going to affect I have and I can. And these three quadrants work together. And it's important for individuals to balance these three activities. When we go back to the example of Richard, he's bitten by a dog. What does he have? He starts crying, he starts making noise, he can, in a way, communicate. Eventually, he has relationships and his peers, his friends come up to help him. And eventually, he's given this bandage and a clutch. He doesn't give up. He has hope. He has faith. He thinks he can move on. And there could be various examples. If you think about my theft situation of a few days ago, I had family coming into the house, talking to me and saying, "Oh, Rita, I can't believe." I had my brother-in-law who walked in very early in the morning. I had my sister who was calling in. My mother and my dad came in to check how I was doing. Actually, I was feeling very strong and I was wondering what were all these people doing. But in other words, I had relationships. Because when I started thinking about it in the night, I realized, these guys were really nice. They came all the way here. My place really has some accessibility issues and my mom hasn't been very well. But she climbed those stairs, she came, she was very supportive, she hung around, she stayed there. So those relationships are important. My husband called up his cousin who works in police. So when I go to the police, while they were trying to exploit me, it wasn't that effective because there was somebody who had called them. So those relationships became important. My relationships at the office, Joanita, for example, was writing to everybody, "Hey, Rita's phone has been stolen, don't be what." And then everybody was writing, "Oh, Rita, sorry, you'll be fine." Those relationships were very critical. But my skills and my abilities were also critical. How do I move away from the writing on the phone to paper? My skills and faith, hope, dreams. How did I manage to get up and say, "I'm going to shoot you"? I don't even have a gun. But all those things come together to play and make you truly move from a situation to something else. And this is really what you see in this. I think Joan will share this plus the recording, but you have parents, family, friends, teachers. You can work, you can gain skills from school, you can do things from your everyday activities. You have values, beliefs, and culture that you can rely on. Your spirituality, your beliefs, because I even began praying a little bit harder because I thought maybe some days I wasn't saying the right prayers. So that next time the guy comes through the window, he gets stuck, those kinds of beliefs. So those are the prayers. Now, if we are to wrap this up, Yes, majority of us have experienced shocks and stresses in various ways. What kind of actions will we take in terms of I can, I have, I am? If there was a major flood, if there was a COVID situation, if you think back to COVID, what skills did you employ? If you had to anticipate any shocks that were to come up, what are the things that you would do in these three quadrants? How am I as a person going to strengthen my abilities? Is it that I'm supposed to acquire a new language? If you got a shock and you're in Paris, would you speak? Maybe you need to learn French. What are the practical things you need to do? If I lost my job today, what else can I do besides working at AFSI? Can I write a report? Can I do a consultancy? What skills do I have that I can employ? What relationships can I tap on that can help me? And what can I do as a person, as I am? What beliefs, what spirituality, what faith, what dream, what hopes can I build so that I can be able to move on? And that really wraps up the session with a chance for you to ask any specific questions, aware that I think we are getting close to the end of the session. Over to you, Joanne, to manage that last part and see how we can take questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been a brilliant presentation on resilience, and thank you for sharing that personal story that actually makes it real. And yes, and so questions, please. Anybody who has a question, you can raise up your hand or just unmute and ask a question, or better still, you can also type in the chat. Yes, but I just want to say it's been very practical because of your example, using your personal story and really telling us how we can become more resilient. Yeah, somebody is already saying thank you so much. Yeah. Yes. So anyone who would like to, okay, let me see something coming through the chat. What is there? Thank you. Okay, it's more. Thank you. Please, we need some questions. Very helpful. Okay, if it's been very helpful, so if you have not registered to be participating in our monthly personal development, do drop your email there so that we can include you on that. But otherwise, let me see, is there any other question coming through? Hey, it's mostly thank you so much. And like I said, this is pro bono, but we have Dr. Rita in psychology taking us through this great topic, resilience. We shall have another session next week, but we just wanted to let you know what is up in the company. Today we have had a personal development talk on resilience, and next month, March, we shall have another topic and we shall be letting you know. So drop your email if you have not done so. What is coming up next on Saturday? We have a business game for those who want to get shock, to recover from shock of unemployment. You just wake up and there's no job. Oh gosh! So you need to be able to do some work at the end, and so we have a business game that we shall be holding on Saturday. So if you like to participate in that business game, do register. We will share the link with you and you participate, because this is a business game. It's an opportunity for you to practice to have a risk-free trial of how your business could work. So gaining skills around planning, decision-making, and all that. So yeah, so that's what is coming up this Saturday. That is the 2nd of March, and it's in Wakiso, Foyer de Charité, one of the most beautiful places in Uganda. If you have not been to Foyer de Charité, that's Namugongo Choto, please visit that venue. That's where we shall be doing the business game. Yes, is there any questions coming through? Let me see. People are sharing email. Yes, drop your email there, because with your email, we are able to share a few of the slides as well as the recording. But if you don't drop your email, you can also find us on YouTube. You look for Majesty Training Associates. Yes. Those who are tech savvy, there is the Q code. You can give us your comments or your feedback. Oh, this is a Google review, a Google review. Million thanks, Rita. Yes. It's all nice. It's all saying thank you and sharing their emails. Yes, thank you. For me, I have no questions because I've really understood, but maybe over to you, Rita, in 1 minute. Any parting words that you can give us? Of course, I don't think some of us can threaten a thief with a non-existent gun, but really, yeah. So, yes.
Yeah, no, happy to talk to you more. I think the opportunities to talk, I just noticed that somebody was concerned about making their I have stronger. And I was telling them that you have many activities that you do that help people get stronger in that aspect.
Yes.
And maybe you could speak to that. On the side, I write. So if you follow me, I don't follow much of the social media, but I write some things that I share in groups that I belong to that motivate you for different themes.
Uh-huh.
You've just given me a challenge to talk more about social connections, and I'll write something about that. But definitely, you need to build your I have. That
Okay.
said, it was very nice being here, John. Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay. Thank you so much. Business Game, the link is already there. Any other services that we provide coaching services, mentorship services, self-awareness services, training services. So yeah, you can reach us out and we see how we can be of help. It has been a pleasure to host you in Zoom for Lunch and Learn. I hope you're having your lunch at your end, because for us here, we're on Zoom for Lunch and Learn. And yeah, it has been a pleasure, and thank you so much. All have a good afternoon or good morning or good evening, wherever you're coming from. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye until March, when we shall share another topic.